Hello and welcome to the October edition of Austin Software Cooperatives. We are doing a interview of the Radical Companies author, José Leal. And we have a couple questions here, but we're probably going to do more of a free format. Uh, so great. And um, thank you for coming on board and doing this interview, Jose.
And
We
thank you
really enjoyed the
for,
book.
yeah, thank you. And thank you for reading it, first of all, and second for inviting us to come here today.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can get into some questions. If you want to give a, I guess maybe an overview of what compelled you to write the book, you and the other authors, and some of the things that you're passionate about that made you write the book and so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
all three of us are entrepreneurs, and at some point we got into corporate, and Matt was with Sun Micro. Um, he was a manager there, and I was VP of a media company of digital at a media company in Canada for over 10 years. And when we met each other, the conversation was, how do we make work better? Because we know that the way work is organized isn't good. And we had both read Reinventing Organizations, which if you have not read yet, you should read. It's a great read. It really informs a lot of the work that we've done over the last 10 years. And that really was about reorganizing from a place of what they called self-management. And and we were sort of exploring self-management. We just kept working on self-management because Matt had his business that was pretty much self-managed from the start, his latest startup, and and the at, we had sold it. We started talking, and we kept saying, "But there's something more. There's something more." And it was really the something more that we finally clicked on when we went together to a co-op conference, the California Co-op Conference here. And as we were walking around, we both said, "This is the missing key. It has to be both co-owned and co-managed." And so we really coined the co-managed at that point because we realized it's not about self-management. It's about co-management. It's us managing together rather than
Mhm.
I'm managing it or you're managing it. And so
Yeah.
that's when we coined co-management and co-ownership, obviously. And so that was really when we started talking about that, what we realized was that that would be an organization that would really distribute both the power and the ownership, the day-to-day decision power and the overall power of ownership. And so that made it uh, something that we really wanted to explore. We worked with some companies, did some pilots, and learned quite a bit about what it was that we wanted to write in the book. And so that was really the impetus. It was an exploration as much as it was a declaration of what we think the future holds.
Amazing. That is a great story. And I commend you on taking action. You know, lots of people, they get into a position to where, okay, we have an idea, we're going to start a business, we have something that's making money. And then they say, oh, well, you know, let's just go ahead and do it the hierarchical way and doing something different. There's just so much pushback on that. Everyone is telling you it won't work. Your accountant will tell you it won't work. Your lawyer will tell you it won't work. So, anyone that breaks through those barriers, they need to be commended. So
Well,
I
thank you
really,
for that.
yeah. Yeah. So, we can get into some of the questions. If anyone else has any questions, put them in the chat. The idea of no bosses. Everybody And especially maybe about 7, 10 years ago, I went to South by Southwest conference, and there was a whole track on, you know, people being, you know, having this. I think the book Drive came out. Was it Daniel Pink? And they were
Hmm.
talking about, people want autonomy, and everybody was saying, "Hey, we want to have these different organizations to where people have more autonomy, and all of that stuff." And I popped up in there. This is 2017. Popped up in there and I said, you know, on this track, and I saw, people were saying, yeah, I think there was a company called Giant and some other companies. They were there. They were talking about, oh, let's have more people. And it was like this harvesting of ideas of what ended up being. And it's just like, but the incentives, like the compensation and all this other stuff, none of that's pushed back down to the people.
Hmm.
So I don't see how people uh, are buying into this, right? So the co-ownership and all of this part that was missing. So
Exactly.
it's like, oh, if people are, and the talk had like 50 people in it. It was packed. And it's like, all of you people are buying this. Oh, I definitely can talk about this because I don't. This is broken. What you guys are talking about, there's an extra, there's an exploit happening here. And then so that kind of made me more passionate about, really digging into some of the things that people would say, just giving a little bit, this is part of the book, just giving a little bit of autonomy. Oh, we want to hear your feedback. But, oh, the books don't look at that, you know, all this
Right.
stuff is crazy.
And the thing is, so
Mm-hmm.
Matt had the experience of the self-management for a number of years, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and he knew that when you give people the freedom, for the most part, people are going to react and excel,
Mm-hmm.
right? React well and excel. And and what he saw was that even then they were still coming to the founders because they were founders. They were still owners. Even though the answer was, I don't make decisions, we make decisions. Whenever he would be approached by
Mm-hmm.
somebody, it's like, hey, what do you think, Matt? Should we do X or Y? He's like, he would always say, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
I don't give answers, I give opinions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if you want an opinion, I'll give you an opinion. But if you want answers, that comes from all of us. It doesn't come from me. And that worked really, really well. But it was because he held to his end of the bargain.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very easy to fall back because you are the owner, to fall back and say, well, okay, I'll make that decision, which in fact they wound up doing when they sold the business. They sold the business out from underneath the employees,
Mm-hmm.
in part because they were the owners and they went into an NDA to negotiate the deal and wound up just announcing that they had sold the business without the employees being aware of it. And for Matt, that was a huge motivator for this book.
Yeah.
I feel, as I said, he's passed, but Matt really wanted this book as a way to say I'm sorry to his team at the old company.
Mm. Okay.
This was his way of saying, had I known, this is what we would have done. Because he realized that no matter how much you push back on giving people autonomy, they will always react to whoever has the power. And he and his partner had the power because they both held 2/3 of the company.
Ah, yeah. So so much that I can delve into there as far as it's almost like a branch in the road. You could have you could it's almost like being altruistic. If you're some type of your founder, owner, you can push, but like what you're saying, you can push back down. What do you think? Or you can kind of impede their development, the people that are in the group, and and say, you know, in some type of, paternalistic way, oh, here's here's the way we should go. And it seems almost one of the things I struggle with is it with doing things where you're sharing ownership, you're sharing the co-management. How do you get around? Well, I don't know. Maybe there's no way to get around, but is it an altruistic endeavor? Is it an altruistic endeavor?
Personally, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's we as human beings are all driven, and this is really my contribution to the book and the work that we've been doing since the book, the last 5 years. It's a recognition that as human beings, we're pieces of life, right? And as pieces of life, we've evolved to have desires to do things, these needs to do things, right? Like I personally can't not do something for too long. Like I get bored out of my skull, right? And then when I'm doing that thing, then I want to do the best that I can at that thing, whatever that thing is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to have the best movie that I'm watching, or I want to draw the best thing or write the best thing, right? Like it just, I'm motivated by that as a just a natural human predisposition. Not everybody's motivated in the exact same way, but most of us are for certain different things, right? Some of us are very athletic. Some of us are very good at writing. Some of us are very artistic. And so that process of recognizing that we have those desires in us, the name of the game for a radical company isn't to build systems of motivation. It isn't to build a place where we're building stories of altruism. It is to literally have a conversation with each other about our needs. And that when we have that understanding, when we help each other understand what our respective needs are, giving ourselves that room in that lane to do that and to support us in that process. It's like it's like recognizing that you are different than the other person, but giving them, not only giving them the space, helping them find their space and then holding that space for them and vice versa. And when you do that as a team and you have conversations at that level of cooperation, it changes what you're talking about. You no longer have to have sort of this otherworldly reason to be doing this. We're doing this because we're nice. We're doing this because we have to, save the world. We're doing this because of all these other things. It's like, I already want that. Like, you don't have to tell me
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to know what direction we're going, and we need to give each other the room to do it and the support because the, maintaining that lane for someone is effort on all our parts.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It resonates with other things that we've reviewed before. There's a book by Sheldon Wolin called Inverted Totalitarianism. It's about, the mess that we're in as far as democracy in the United States. But one of the things he talked about was, it's interesting, the word political. You have these different definitions, but a true political is, maybe it uh, sounds kind of maybe obvious to some people, but a true political endeavor is finding the shared um, goals between people instead of trying to. I mean, when someone says something's political, they can kind of have a negative connotation with it. It can be many different things. And then what you're saying, kind of resonates with, okay, everyone, we have our top five priorities, they overlap in some way. And so it ends up being, in that sense, doesn't have to be altruistic, like what you're saying, but it's, especially that book, it was like, so there's so many impediments. the type of person that builds um, that way, finding shared goals. Uh, it's a special skill set because it's so
Hmm.
easy to go down the wrong path there. Um,
That's very true.
yeah,
That's very true.
yeah. Okay.
I would say that just to wrap that piece up,
Mm-hmm.
because what we found in many of the experiments that we've done around what we call a radical purpose, which is this desire we have in us to do our thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're all unique. We all have these different desires. Some things appeal to us, other things don't. And everybody has their own sort of radical purpose, if you will. What we have found is that because there isn't a recognition of it, we don't see it in each other. We don't talk about it. It's not part of what we plan. Like we plan about all this stuff outside. We plan about how we're going to attack the model, the business model, and deal with, the marketplace and all of this stuff. Like we plan the heck out of everything outside,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't do anything about us.
Mm-hmm.
That's just supposed to happen, right? And we expect that the external thing is going to be the driver. So we don't realize that there's already a driver in each of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's about discovering and using that knowledge about that driver as a team, our drivers within us, not imposing something new, not creating something. We talk about alignment. Even in the book, we talked about alignment. And what we've realized after the book was that alignment actually squeezes a lot of people's unique directions into something that cuts them off. I like to say it's like, think of us, we're all unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, oh, let's align us. And so everybody sort of has to get pushed into something that they may not be. And so our language today is that we align our purpose, we don't align our direction. It's still, we individually have our own purposes. We bring them together so that we understand what they are. And then we have a direction that emerges from that, rather than saying, here's the direction, and now let's align everybody on that direction.
Right. Yeah. Because I'm assuming it's because it's too confining to say. Yeah.
Right. We talk about autonomy, and then we
Yeah.
say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, look, autonomy. Now let's go here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's do it this way. And then there it's all out the window, right?
Exactly.
We can't have it both ways.
Yeah. 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 That's amazing. So let's get into the second part, the co-ownership and governance. I had a couple questions here, but as far as like just talking about, I guess in the next portion of that was the comp and incentives. We can talk about that, but
Mm-hmm.
co-ownership and governance, to me, the rad model seems to be, if you can give a overview of that model, and maybe you said that maybe you've done some changes, I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
how did you come up with that, and what are the top things? I found it to be very compelling. So
So
yeah.
we came up with it because we we ourselves experienced in corporate world that compensation was used as a carrot and a stick,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're going to get the bonus. You could get the pay increase, and oh, you were bad. You're not going to get the pay increase. You're not going to get the bonus, whatever, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's used as a means of manipulation.
Wait. So maybe we should do an overview of the rad model, real,
Sure,
just
sure.
like a quick one. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Go ahead.
go ahead. Do you want me to do it? Or you want to do
Yeah.
it?
You can go.
Okay. So the RAD model is an understanding that we as human beings operate best when we get recognized for what we do. And when we use money as the way to do recognition, it destroys, in scientific evidence, it destroys our motivation rather than helping our motivation. Lots and lots of research where if I say to you, let's play this game, and we can play the game for half an hour, and you're like, hey, this is fun. Let's play the game. Let's play the game. And then the researcher walks in and says, okay, I want you guys to play for another half an hour. Here's $10 for you guys to play. Right away, it's like, really? I don't want to play anymore. Right? Like, you're paying me to do something that I was having fun at. Something's wrong here. Right? Like, this isn't fun anymore. I don't want to do it.
Mhm.
So, RADs are an understanding that what we want to do is build recognition of one another, of each other's work, of each other's behavior, not just work, but behavior. Because we've all experienced this where there's people in an organization that do well from a financial perspective. Maybe they're good salespeople, maybe they're good developers, maybe they're good, but they're real. Oh, this is going to go on YouTube, but they're not nice people, right? And so you end up destroying culture because you want to keep that person happy because they're making the money. Culturally, that's really, really bad. And every, CEO has said that has talked about this, has said, get rid of those people. You can't afford to have those people in your organization. And yet every company has those kinds of people, right? And so what RADS was an effort to rethink how we value each other and then let that be the way that we value our distribution of ownership.
Mhm.
And so sometimes the person doesn't show up every single day, who doesn't, spend all the hours, shows up and does a lot of work in just a little bit of time and solves the big problem. And that person's recognition needs to be not because they showed up for a couple hours and just pay them for the 2 hours, but something above that, as everybody recognizing that that person came in and saved the day.
Mhm.
And that's different. It's not because it's a bonus and you're going to get the bonus if you do it. It's you were recognized, and it so happens that you get a bonus in the form of a RAD distribution.
Yeah. It that story happens so often. Someone can dwell on a problem for years, months or years, and then come in and, share it with everyone else. And then you also, one of the things that made it very compelling to me is there's so many stories, right? The Google story for they had their little Google time on Friday, and then I think AdWords came out of that, Gmail came out of that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then after a while, people started getting, um, you could say smart about it or self interest about it or what have you, and saying, wait a minute, why would I contribute this thing I've been thinking about for years? I'm not getting extra, shares or anything like that. And it ended up, being, you know, it was counter incentive.
Right.
So, people would say, and there was no way of compensating, recognizing all that stuff. So people would just leave. They'd work on something on their own. They'd get the kind of the idea for it, and they're like, okay, I'm out of here. I'm starting something on the side. Um, and so this problem of trying to incentivize people to bring their ideas into the entity, of course, when it's co-ownership, you'd think that that would be straightforward, but the model, the method for doing it is not. The RAD model seems to,
Right.
have some way of bringing incentivizing people to bring those ideas back in.
And it's
So
not, again, we don't even think about it as an incentive system. It's really the incentive exists in you. You're already incentivized because
yeah,
you want to
you want
succeed.
to do it. Yeah.
And then your colleagues are seeing it.
Mhm.
And that's the biggest thing. I mean, why do we do anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? I I love to keep the house clean. But if I don't, if I clean the house and my wife doesn't notice, I go, honey, did you notice I cleaned the house? Right? Like, right? It's like, I want the kudos for this, right?
Yeah.
And so we all do. We all want to be recognized for what it is. That's just
Mm-hmm.
part of human nature. And so we're really not trying to invent things above who we are. We're just trying to use what we already have built into us
Right.
so that it's as natural as possible. Obviously, it's not something that we know how to do yet globally. And so we need to then develop the language, develop the models around how we do that.
Yeah. So it's not like we said. If you try to put a money, you inject money into a creative process, it's gonna impede it. It's gonna have a
Hmm.
problem. Then there's a kind of a disincentive when it's like, oh, you came up with Gmail, thanks, bye. You know,
Right, right.
6 billion, how many $1 billion,
Yeah, no
whatever that
kidding.
is, and the guy that made it is like, he's not a billionaire. He's made some money. He's not, and so it's kind of like, so I guess there's something, a component. There's recognition, and then this whole disincentive. Like, people don't
Right,
want to be exploited,
right.
right? So I guess that kind of goes without saying,
Yeah.
um, for most, but that one sticks out to me, you know, with
And the
everybody
fact
here. Go ahead.
and the fact that you've got your colleagues are the ones that are really telling you this, not just one individual. Because the way it works is that every period, whatever your period happens to be, it could be weekly, it could be monthly, um, it everybody gives you that feedback, um, and their rad, their points get assigned to you. In other words, I can't give it to myself.
Right.
I have to give it to whoever I feel I need that deserved it. And so
Yeah.
and I do, and I give it to the people that I deserve it. And I can do so on the daily basis, on the weekly basis, whatever. And that basically means that I'm giving you the recognition you need, and you're giving it to me if I deserve it.
Mm,
And that
mm,
still doesn't mean that, obviously, if hours are a piece of the action, right? We need to calculate hours because this world still runs on hours,
mm,
at least for now. Um, and it means that you might have some expertise or some degree or something that warrants some kind of bump in the share. But those are negotiated things. And what we saw was that um, splitting pie um, was a great idea for startups, but then they made a mistake. They split the pie at the when the company forms rather
right.
than splitting the pie every week.
Mm, mm,
And that's what RADS is. RADS is a continuing of that model forever.
mm,
You're always splitting the pie. And so never do you hold your shares, your rights to the distribution
mm,
based on history,
mm,
right? If tomorrow you disappear, your shares start to disappear because everybody else is getting recognitions and you're not because you're not there.
right.
You don't
Yeah.
hold that percentage forever
Hmm. Right.
because new value is being born and that new value devalues your old value.
Hmm. Yeah, they called it a dynamic allocation versus static. And just like you said, that way, how you characterize it was the forming of the company. Their, I believe their way of saying is, right around $1 million or so, you get this investment. It's time to do essentially static. So now you distribute the shares, do your option system, and now you're static. And you got the same problem you had before. They solved the problem, kind of solved
Right.
it earlier. They still had a hierarchy and all this other stuff. But
Right.
that part, it's not going to be attractive to those of us who want that, everything that was appealing before with the dynamic. Um It'd be interesting to ask him. I'm assuming he probably would say it has something to do with the legal complications or something like that. He had a lot in there he was talking about for there. But yes, really, really interesting. Oh, a question I when I was going through this through the rad system. So you have the month, let's say it was a monthly allocation, and everybody, kind of to reiterate, let's say everyone has 1,000 rads, 1,000 points, and let's say you're not making any money yet, and you're getting 1,000 points, and everybody has 1,000 points. They have to distribute to other people. And I wanted to say it was based off of, is it the Rochdale or Rothdale system? I want to say it was
Yeah, I
something like
can't
that.
remember the name.
Yeah.
Matt did that research, so I don't
Oh, okay.
remember exactly.
And so you're distributing it, and it's like, oh, this person got a bunch of sales. I like that. So here's all my 1,000 for the month or what have you. One thing that jumped out to me is this: let's say you go through a year and everybody's distributing. Let's say there's 10 of you, and there's one person no one's distributing to. Is that you talk about it being feedback, but is it
Mhm.
also, I don't know how to put this, but a natural way for an exit? So someone kind of decides to leave the company because they learn these people, they don't appreciate me, and I'm not aligned with them, so I'm just going to leave. Is that a
It
yeah?
that feedback can go both ways, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, people love me, people respect me, they like what I'm doing. People
Mm-hmm.
don't like me, people don't like how I behave or what I do. Um, but the important part that's missing there, so you got it right that it's both ways, both
Mm-hmm.
positive and negative feedback. Um, but there's an important part, which is every period we talk.
Right.
We have to talk. This is none of this happens as just a transaction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
poof, I give the point and that's it. I
Right.
have to tell you why,
Right.
right? Why either way. If you ask me, hey, how come you haven't?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? I've,
Yeah.
well, because here's why.
Right. Right.
This, you've done this, you've done that, you pissed me off about this. And that reality, if you're mature enough, which you grow to having comfort in having those conversations, if you're mature enough in those conversations, after a while, it's like it's just a wink and a smile. Like you know what you did, right?
Right.
I know what you did. Like you pissed me off, or you lied, or you cheated, or you were amazing and you just saved my bacon. I don't. After a while, it happens in the moment.
Mm.
And then you recognize it later and it's a wink and a smile,
Yeah.
if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of stand-ups where people. I mean, there's no question. You know, you didn't do any work. Or whatever. Every day you come in and you're saying, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And the next day it's like, oh, I didn't do that. Okay. Uh,
And the
that
next
kind of
day you're like, I'm going to do that again.
right. And then going on for months. Okay. So I guess the real question I'm trying to ask is, there's problem children. There's people who can be a problem.
Yeah.
And does this make it to where it's a little bit easier for them to just leave on their own, kind of thing?
Yeah. One of the things that we've actually developed since the book is this model of having an organization where people come in because they're sponsored in. They're not hired
Right.
because they're co-owners.
Mm-hmm.
And but they need a sponsor or two.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who sponsors them, in essence, takes on responsibility to show them the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot stay in the organization long term if you don't have a sponsor. So if somebody says, I can no longer be a sponsor for this individual.
Okay.
You have to go find another sponsor, if you understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
And so it works in relationship with rats, but the sponsorship model essentially gives you a support system, and it's not a fixed support system that this person is the one that sponsors everybody. Anybody can be a sponsor if they wish, and anybody can have sponsees in that they support. It's extra effort, obviously. You're helping them, you're onboarding them, you're their sort of go-to person, and so on and so forth. But that person can say, "No, I'm going to switch. I'm going to go over to Angel. I'm no longer happy with Watson, and I'm as my sponsor." And Angel says, "Yeah, no worries. I'm your sponsor, and we're good." As long as you have a sponsor, but now everybody is going to view you as a team, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, "Hey, Angel, what's Jose up to?" Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and can we work with him? Can we help him? Can we both
Uh,
do this together?
yeah.
Right? It's not the boss, but it's a sponsor.
Yeah.
It's someone who's there who has a longer term in the organization, who has a sense of responsibility to help that individual have a mentor and move forward. It's it's kind of what a boss should have been in the traditional business,
Yeah.
but can't be because of the structures that are there.
Right. So when they don't have a sponsor anymore, that's an indicator that there's a it's a red flag, like a big red flag.
Yeah, they as soon as they lose sponsors, they're asked to go find another sponsor. They're given a time, and if they can't find a sponsor within a certain time, then they're asked to move on because they don't have a place in this organization. No one's
Right.
willing to stand up for them.
Is that pretty rare? And then um it seems like it would be. It seems like this they self-select to leave if everybody is just has a problem with them.
If you, it's rare because when you come in, generally that sponsor really starts to feel
Yeah.
ownership slash responsibility for you because I brought you in and I
Mm-hmm.
want you to succeed because it looks good on me.
Yeah.
And if you fail, it doesn't look good on me. And so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to help you to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah. We within our group we had this thing where we just can't get it's very hard to give up on people for us. Like we just don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
We absolutely don't want to.
That's human nature.
It's a, it's just it's near impossible. You you kind of have to be gifted in order to for us with people who would be in this type of organization where going on and all that, the type of person that can say, you know what, we don't want you anymore. Like that's hard. That's just it's like no, give them another chance. No, here's
But
some of my
that's
money. Here's some. I'll do all your work. You end up doing all that stuff.
but it's interesting because it is easier to say I can't be your sponsor anymore, but I'm not kicking you out. Go find another
Mm,
sponsor,
mm,
right? I'm not responsible for you to leave, for you leaving. It's on you to find another sponsor. And if you do, no worries, you stay.
mm. Nice little. We'll call it a cheat code.
It's a bit of an out, but it's a powerful out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the book.
No, it
Seeing it in
was
a new
not. This is
version.
something this is something we've developed over the last 3 years.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we need that new edition for that book.
Sorry. We're actually working on a new book, but it's a
Okay.
little different.
Oh,
I'll
totally
maybe
different
tell you a
book.
little bit about, yeah.
Okay, we can end with that, or when we get to that point. So, let's see. Let's go to um this from theory to practice. This resonated with me. This whole, you warned that replacing bosses with complex rules keeps the same control
Hmm.
logic.
Hmm.
What's the minimum viable agreement you've seen work? So we're talking about basically, like I said, you, when you're creating an entity, of course, you have this hierarchy. People kind of know, oh, if you have this rigid command and control structure, you can adapt and all this other stuff. When you add in these complex rules, it's like, okay, we replaced it, and you still get the same kind of problem.
Yeah.
So, kind of min maxing. Okay, what's the minimum? We just talked about the rad, so is that the minimum
So
viable agreement, or
we've actually moved away from what we wrote in the book as well
yeah?
on that, and not moved away so much, moved up, if you will, like learned some things.
Mhm.
And one of the things is we were still talking about agreements in the book. And as we worked more and more with agreements with different organizations, what we realized was that uh, when you're still building agreements, there is this expectation and this level of force on individuals that they must align. And back to the alignment conversation that we had earlier, right?
Mm,
And it's like we have to agree on a rule, but I don't like X and you don't like Y. I mean, it's like, well, it doesn't matter. Let's go with Z because both of us don't hate Z. And so we end up giving our X and our Y, and we sort of settle on Z, and we're not happy. Neither of us are happy, right? And that so often happens with rules, right? It's not that anybody intentionally wants to piss everybody off. It's just that anything that you arbitrarily set is going to piss somebody off, right? And and arbitrarily meaning that every single individual doesn't have their input. And so um, what we've played with, and we're actually developing some software around this, is protocols. Now, you guys are in the tech space, so you get protocols.
yeah,
In the tech space, protocols are everything. If we didn't have protocols, we wouldn't have a tech space.
right.
Um, I don't know why, but it's taken us hundreds of years to figure out that we need protocols in the social space.
Mm-hmm.
And work is a social space. And protocols, unlike agreements, are selected or adopted by the participants. They're not agreed upon per se,
Mm-hmm.
they're selected. So if I give you a roster of protocols around how do we do this meeting, how do we do the Monday morning meeting, how do we do the stand up,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, go look at the protocols for Monday morning stand up and pick a protocol. Everybody go pick a protocol. You'll find out that about 80% of the people pick the same protocol.
Hmm.
And then you've got 20% of the people that don't pick the same protocol. The question then becomes, can we interface those two components? In other words, can people still use the protocol they chose and simply interface between the two sets of protocols, their own and the larger group that's already defined? Again, another 80% of people go, no worries. Everybody liked that first one. I was thinking about that one. I'll go with that one anyway. So that's the protocol we're adopting. And then that remaining few percent are people who have some reason not to participate in the way that they're expected to participate. And our answer isn't you have to. The answer is how do we connect the two sets of protocols? The ones that the majority wants to use and the ones that the minority wants to use. How do we interface those two set of protocols?
Okay.
And that becomes an effort for all of us. So we don't dismiss what you want. In fact, we honor what you want by figuring out another protocol that joins those protocols together. And I'm being a bit abstract, but let me, and I know we're also short on time for the folks to have some questions. So let me see if I can use a brief example for this. Um, Say, for example, that the question is, when do we meet on that Monday morning meeting, right? So simple thing. Do we meet at 9? Do we meet at 8:30? Do we meet at 10? When do we meet, right? And there are people who come in and say, 9 o'clock sounds good for everybody for the 80%. And then there's the guys that don't like to show up at 9 o'clock. They want to show up at 10, right? And then there's the early risers that want to show up at 8 o'clock, as an example. And there's, out of 10 people, there's one or two of each of the other things that don't want to do with the 9 o'clock, right? The issue isn't that they have to be forced to be there at 9 o'clock. The issue is that we have to resolve the problem of them not being there at 9 o'clock. So do they do notes before? Do they do a video that's going to tell everybody at the stand up what's going on? Do they file some kind of report? What is it that they're going to do to resolve that delta between the one protocol and the other? And what happens is that after a while, people realize that that delta shrinks and shrinks and disappears.
Okay.
And so it ends up being that people decide to start to work on the same protocol because the burden for them is greater than not being on that protocol. So it's a decision they make rather than being forced to do something. Because if they're willing to do that delta, then they can keep doing it. But over time, people decide not to do the delta.
Uh, we can get into some of these questions.
Yeah.
I did have, there's this one, ever, some of the whole thing, Arrows, that's what I'm thinking of, Arrows theorem, Kenneth Arrow. So there's this within game theory, when you're talking about preferences that people have, there's a paradox of, they call it Arrow's impossibility theorem. And when you're trying to figure out what everyone prefers, there's a fundamental a problem there where you'll run into, oh, we found, you, these are your top five things, we agree on this top three. And when you try to do that, there's all of these other paradoxes that come in, and some of the things that you're bringing up, it made me think of that when you're talking about protocols, like how you come up with what everyone agrees with. It's a thing that people have been wrestling with within game theory, and
Mm-hmm.
it's Arrow's impossibility theorem is what they call
Yeah.
it. But I mean, you basically, it's like a pick your poison kind of situation. You can find it out what people agree on, but it'll end up being like the criteria for finding out. So when you're saying the protocol, the way you find out, it'll end up being, well, I mean, you may look into it, but it'll end up being hierarchical in some way. It's kind of like, oh, we had to have a constitution. Some smart people somewhere had to make it. And then, okay, we listen to them. And well, I guess we can always disagree with them later, but it's kind of like that. You run into that, but
Well,
I don't
the
know.
thing is about a protocol is that it's open,
Yeah,
right? So you can increase the protocol. So 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, anybody can
right,
go in there and version the protocol,
right, right.
and
And
anyone can do it.
yeah, the assumption being there's no penalty for changing the protocol.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
there, you don't have to have someone say it's okay to change the protocol.
right, right.
And then if you change the protocol, nobody adopts it. Nobody adopted it. Oops, it didn't seem to be something people wanted.
It's a participatory portion of that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So let's go into some questions here. Um, So I know a lot of people are familiar with it. We talk about cooperatives. I know when we had our meeting, like cooperatives is this big umbrella, and
Hmm.
then it's kind of there's different kinds. And then this whole idea of co-management and co-owned, that is what we're talking about within radical companies. So
Right.
it's a subset of those, when people are saying co, I'm pointing this out for some people, to reiterate, just because you're cooperative doesn't mean you're co-managed and co-owned. And another thing is we would say co-directed, but how you
Hmm.
define it, that's within co-managed. And
Hmm.
so um so one of the questions here, they it's Angel using the term, so with the cooperative business model makes them think of a natural extension of the agile process. And have you seen the same types of problems manifest in the co-op businesses? And I know on your on the podcast that you all have, there's a bunch about agile on there.
Yeah.
So some of the overlaps of agile and this co-management, co-ownership, and the concepts of that. Maybe speak a bit about that.
Yeah. And so we think that co-ops are going to grow, but we believe they need to change their reason for being.
Mm-hmm.
Most co-ops historically have been sort of the uh, workers' way of of fighting the system.
Yeah.
And we say, don't be a worker, be an owner,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's a mindset shift. It's like all us workers,
Right.
and 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 so it's really more of a um, taking this world of gig work and realizing that those people want that independence, but they really aren't getting it, right? The desire is there, but they're really just getting reconsumed by the system. Um, Gig workers, contract workers, freelancers, um, that energy, those folks are out there by the millions.
Mm-hmm.
Given a good way to participate in a co-op
Mm-hmm.
in the form of a radical company, um, we see that that's a huge boon in moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
If these co-ops become, if radical companies, what we're actually calling collaboratives now,
Mm-hmm.
um, if these organizations are as easy to set up as an LLC today, there is no reason anyone would pick to do a hierarchical organization than they are. And that's the work we're doing. The work we're doing is to move towards being able to set up a collaborative in 24 hours
Oh, okay.
so that you can just set up your collaborative, have all your tools available, your RADS tools, your your protocols, and ready to go. Being able to register an unincorporated association, do all of that. 24 hours, you're ready to go. Let's go. And give you those tools and as online tools that are owned in a cooperative way so that they're not sitting in the hands of some powerful players, but exist as a cooperative model.
And so that on the agile component of it, if you can remember some of that, I guess, and maybe Angel, you can jump in with in the chat. But do you? I think I watched one of the podcasts where it's basically the idea of agile is kind of broken in the sense of it's what I would call pseudo participation. So
Right,
you're getting input and you're saying thank you, goodbye, and we're going to make the real decisions after you all leave. And
right,
there's always types of ways of manipulating that. And
right.
but I didn't know what you. I think that was somewhat of the critique I was seeing.
Absolutely. And not only that, it's if you had agile, real
Mm,
agile,
mm,
organizational wide, it'd be a big difference. But when you've got a development team that's using agile and then they're answering to a marketing team or a sales team that isn't,
mhm.
then you're not.
Right.
You could be as agile as you want, but really, if what's coming over that wall, those demands, those timelines, those timeframes are all non-agile,
Mhm.
then you're not.
Yeah. I think when I brought this up in our talk before, the concept of there's a book, Carol Pateman, Participatory Democracy, and they have this breakdown of participation and their pseudo participation, which benefits the hierarchy, but because they found out that, oh, when people feel like they participated, they um, they basically obey the top down a little bit more. So they like that. But the key phrase in there was binding decision making power. So if you don't have binding decision making power, so basically you're an owner, right? You're co-managing, you're co-working. It's in my language, it's kind of an exploit
Mm-hmm.
to, let people have a little insight. So agile can be used. I'll argue that mostly it's used to give people this no binding decision making power, but this pseudo participation feeling. And so that people buy in. That's the phrase I'm looking. You get more
Mm-hmm.
buy in. It gives
Exactly.
people, and that's a little exploit
Let's
there.
let's let them pretend that they feel they're free to do what they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, um, yeah, I don't know, Angel, if that's what you're getting here.
Yeah,
With
Angel,
that.
if you have
Can you hear
another
me?
question on that.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me? Oh, okay. Actually, I like the example he used of gig workers because already I'm thinking of, yes, there are gig workers who, um, in their minds, they have the appropriate mindset where, hey, if I can meet some people who are like me and we are complementary to each other and they accept that, and we have a shared goal, yes, the rad company or the agile project can succeed. But then you've got gig workers who they'll say, oh yeah, I want to be in a rad company. But when you start seeing them work, it's really more of, well, I want to do my own thing in my own time. And yeah, I'll work with you guys sometimes, or you can help me or whatever. It sort of goes back to the earlier discussion about, well, okay, you sponsor someone and then it's not quite working. So what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of what I was getting at with the comparison to agile. Uh,
Right.
People think it's a sort of a magical, mystical solution to everything, and no, man, you've got to there. Like you were talking about protocols earlier, there have to be some understood elements for the thing to work.
Exactly. And back to what I said about RADs as well, which is you have to have grown-up conversations about really your motivations. That's we talk about everything but, right? We don't talk about ourselves. We don't talk about what makes us tick. And that's really what's radical is doing uh, having conversations about ourselves with sponsors, with each other as human beings who have these desires to do these things. And sometimes we think we have one desire, we actually have another, and that's okay. But we have to have those conversations to say, I thought I wanted to do X and now I want to do Y. Fine, let's go. It's not a, well, you can't do that. You decided to do X. It's a, okay, cool. You now know. You now know you don't want to be doing X anymore. You want to do Y. Let's go for it. And that's that kind of openness to a reality, to a sense of how do we move forward, is, I think, the critical part of what we're calling a radical company. It is the human aspect first. That's why, we have the three-legged stool. Meaning and belonging are the first things. That's the top of the list.
Yeah.
The top of the list, right? And when we by the time we get to alignment and experiments, we've already done the meaning and belonging part. And if you haven't done that right, you can't do the transparency. You can't do the decentralization. That you can't do those things if you're not already meeting your needs.
Okay. I've got another question here from Gage. Does the problem worker, I think this is back to I was saying the problem child, the problem
Yeah.
worker make the company stronger in the end?
It can actually. That individual can actually, first of all, we wouldn't call them a problem worker. We might find there are people who haven't found their right place, right? And part of the conversation is this the place you really want to be at? And if so, we're going to fight for you to be here. And that means we're all going to try to figure out how do we make it so that it works. If you really want to be here, if you say, this isn't the place for me, and it's like, cool, we'll help you get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
We'll help you find some other place. I mean, it's about the people. It's not about the organization. It's about the people. The organization is an incident, right? If we worry about the company more than we worry about each other, the company doesn't mean anything because we're willing to you know, take what the company means to us, which is a story, a fiction, and say that that's more important than any one of us. And that means we're going to then do the exact same thing that corporations do to each other.
Yeah.
Hey, Wavel, can I step in here for a second?
Yeah, I think Gage wanted something.
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead, Gage.
If I could just clarify my question a little bit more, which
Mm.
I kind of asked awkwardly, I guess. It's kind of a question about culture, and it's taken from anthropology, where those that are breaking the rules and the rules and protocols and so forth are also helping to establish them. In other words, the collectivity says, wait a minute, this isn't working for us. So it's still about the people. But it's also
Absolutely, Gage.
because what you're telling me is that what you're building is an emergent property that's literally happening there on the spot. And I think that's absolutely exciting. I mean, I really loved your book, and thank you for being here. And I come from anthropology, so that's my background, and I'm very interested in the anthropology of work. And I was reading your book alongside The Pandemic Workplace by Gershon, came out a little bit later than yours. So I'm very interested in kind of seeing these anthropological principles of how organizations hold together or cultures hold together and what role they play. And one of them is that when somebody breaks the rules that are tacit, meaning they kind of came out of an emergent property, it actually hardens those rules, not in a disciplinary manner, but in a manner where it's what is cherished and it's what brings everyone together.
Thank you so much for those words because I think that's exactly what a radical company is. It's a recognition that that reality in human nature, we don't mind, like we all have friends that are a little weird, right? And we still hold on to them, right? That they're a little difficult, they're a little weird, and we're like, but that's the way he is. You know, my friend from high school, his name is Eddie. Like he's the weirdest kid, right? Like he's not a kid anymore. He's my age, but it was always difficult. It was always strange. You couldn't count on him. But I tell you, you could just absolutely love this guy when it came to hanging out, right? He's just the best person to hang out with. Would I count on him to do my books? No. but he would be an amazing person to have on a team. That to me is recognizing that people are different and we don't have to have the same relationship with each and every one of them. And that means that they have a role to play within a collaborative.
What's interesting to me is what you're building is something that's been with us way back in hunter-gatherer days. So
We're not building anything. We're simply discovering what we used to do.
you're honoring, yeah. And I like the way you said that money kind of washes that out, and that you're creating a world of meaning and a world of care. So what usually holds things together? Monetary. And you're replacing that with care, which, in anthropology goes into kinship. I mean, all that sort of stuff. You're building that kinship. And, we create kin just as much as we inherit them. So it's very interesting that this is a little experiment on how to build community and build community outside a purely transactional sort of relationship. So thank you. Very exciting.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for the kind words about the book and our work.
Yeah. Angel, did you still have something?
Yeah, it was about protocols. And I wanted to hear your perspective, Josue, because whenever I hear people talk about protocols, I think of the agile projects I've been in where, or efforts, I should say, really, where that someone says, we need some protocols, we need some rules we'll all agree to. And maybe I lay out 7 or 8. And they end up laying out 25 or 30. And I'm saying, hey, wait a minute. If we have to go to that point, this is no longer agile, because obviously someone's not understanding what we're supposed to be doing here. And I try and simplify it for them. I always try to use, well, when the fire alarm goes off in the building, do you break out your fire alarm manual and look for the appropriate, steps? No, you get up from your seat and you look for the sign on the wall that has a graphic that has an arrow that points to where you're supposed to go. You want to keep it simple. So when you say protocols for setting up a rad company, talk about that a little bit. How in depth?
It's really up to the team, but our encouragement is, and again, this is all being developed as we speak, so we're in mid work here, but protocols are mostly replacement of old policies. Okay, so that's the first thing. So, like you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't do the other thing, and it's like, no, we're going to do this way. It's not that I can't do the other thing. We just chose to do this thing this way. There's a huge difference in that. You tell me I can't do that, the first thing that I think of is, how do I screw that up? How do I go do the thing you told me not to do? Right? That's the first thing that comes to my mind. It's like, really? I can't do that? Why not? Something's up, right? But if I go, hey, the way we can do this thing is through this, for me, that works for me. And it, again, in our exchanges, most of what we have found is like 80% of the people gravitate to the same answer. The level at which you go, typically, the first mistake is exactly what you said, Angel. They over prescribe protocols, right? They go into the nitty gritty, The thing is that when you overdo it, you soon find out that it's overkill because you have to maintain those protocols. Any maintainer of software knows what it means to maintain software. And so if you don't maintain a protocol, okay, then that protocol starts to age out and nobody's adopting it, nobody's doing, and it makes no sense. They're living, okay, back to what Gage is talking about here. These aren't rules on a wall that somebody imposes. These are things that we use as tools that grow with us, that we maintain, that we care for, that we curate. And if they're not being done, then they don't work. And so it's easy to have a book where you have a whole bunch of BS and you keep pulling it out every year and you go, remember, we wrote this BS last year? That's different than, oh, I have my protocol and it hasn't been updated in 2 years. Oh, really? That's interesting. Why not? Right? Because everybody wants to see a protocol improve over time. And if nobody's adopting a protocol and it hasn't improved over time, something's up. So there are signals from the community, and it's not just your protocols in your organization. These are open protocols that are global. So you can learn from other organizations that already have protocols. That's why we say you can spin up one of these things in 24 hours, because you can adopt playbooks of protocols from other organizations that have already done it. And then you change it and swap out and improve and participate in other protocols if you want to. Does that answer your question?
Yes, because I guess in the efforts that I've been involved with, that I use as an example, the mistake they made, or maybe I should really probably just say, there are people who are built for agile and people who are not. And these people were not built for agile. And they absolutely needed every detail defined, which essentially tells you, hey, you need to be working on something else, because this needs to be more dynamic than you seem to be able to handle. So yes, the way you described it, that's the way I would imagine it. And I guess at that point, you would just go back to, okay, now it goes down to the individuals and how you would deal with, are you fitting into the situation or not?
Yeah, and it's a two-way decision. It's not a my decision, you don't fit. Right?
Yeah.
I have no power over you. We collectively hold power. I have no power over you.
Yeah, that reminds me of what Wavel had said earlier about how, yeah, you have your daily stand-ups and your sprint reviews. And when you start seeing consecutively that, hey, wait a minute, someone said they were going to do something and it keeps not happening, then okay, just organically, something's going to happen one way or another.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good time to wrap it up. Um, if you have any, I wanted to thank you again, Jose. This is great, and if you have any suggestions for other books that we would review, of course, you guys are working on a new book as well, so we'd be excited to see that. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. Serving Life, we're hoping that it'll be out next year, and it's a real different take. It's basically covers our last 10 years of research, and not specifically about organizations, but from a perspective of understanding the movements that are happening in the wild that are contributing to a future that we think is going to be a very different future than the one we currently have. And Radical Companies and many other organizations are a part of, and individuals are a part of that work. And so we're going to have a couple of dozen case studies. We're hoping to publish it in 3 or 4 languages to start, and to publish it as an open book written by Life rather than by some authors.
Oh, okay, that's amazing. I'm looking forward to that, and I guess we'll end there.